Good morning. My name is Miguel DeJesus, and this morning I am standing outside in a rainy Fredericksburg, Virginia, to talk to you about somebody who's honored in this community. This statue here has been erected in the honor of Brigadier General Hugh Mercer. Now, Brigadier General Hugh Mercer did die during the American Revolution, but prior to that, he was actually a trained physician who emigrated from Scotland in the 1750s. After emigrating, he took up roots and set up a practice in Philadelphia. However, during his time there, he was commissioned to join the provincial forces during the French and Indian War. During this time, he befriended Colonel George Washington on the campaign to take Fort Duquesne. Colonel Washington actually recommended that he move from Pennsylvania down here to Fredericksburg. As many may know, George Washington did grow up nearby on Ferry Farm. And so Hugh Mercer did take him up on that offer and moved to this area in about 1760. He set up a practice here, an apothecary shop actually, where he treated many of the local citizens in Fredericksburg. When the war broke out for the American Revolution, he once again answered the call to duty and was offered command. Gradually, he rose to the rank of brigadier general and was with Washington during the campaign that saw him engaged in battle at the Battle of Princeton, New Jersey. During this battle, he did sustain mortal wounds from British shot and bayonets and died several days later of these wounds. George Washington erected or ordered the erection of a monument in his honor. However, it wasn't until about 1907 that Congress actually allocated the funding in order to build this monument that you see behind me. The inscription on the monument reads, "Sacred to the memory of Hugh Mercer, Brigadier General in the Army of the United States. He died on the 12th of January, 1777, of the wounds he received on the 3rd of the same month, near Princeton in New Jersey, bravely defending the liberties of America. The Congress of the United States, in testimony of his virtues and their gratitude, have caused this monument to be erected." It was a great honor to have this monument erected on behalf of Hugh Mercer. However, his legacy in this area did not end with the monument and is not the only way that Hugh Mercer is remembered. So now I am sitting in the Virginiana room of the Central Rappahannock Regional Library's Fredericksburg location in downtown Fredericksburg. What's special and significant about this room is that it is dedicated to the preservation of local history, specifically Fredericksburg and Spotsylvania County, but also Virginia in general. Down here you can find a lot of historical documents that you can use for research. For example, right now we're in the what I would consider the lobby of the room, of the Virginiana room. And out here you'll find storage drawers with microfilm containing articles going all the way back to the early 18th century from the Virginia Gazette. Additionally, there's also storage drawers, filing cabinets that have a lot of primary and secondary source work, mostly copies and transcriptions, but you'll find a lot of information regarding letters written here in the Fredericksburg area by locals to and from. You'll also find some copies of old photographs that were taken over the past couple of centuries. You'll also find additional research conducted by other folks who've been in this area. Additionally, inside the actual quiet reading room, there are shelves full of primary and secondary source work, mostly printed publications. But a lot of what's there is useful because you have the edited recreations or prints and publications of letters, documents. One thing that I found in my research on Hugh Mercer was, in the papers written by George Washington, letters referencing Hugh Mercer. So a lot of high quality research there. There's also an entire section devoted to genealogy in this area. So this particular area of the library is very important and showcases how relevant it is in the city of Fredericksburg to preserve the local history. Some things specific to Hugh Mercer that I found while doing research here include, again, previous research notes I found in these filing cabinets. letters written by Washington, which I already referenced, articles, magazine articles about his shop. I found one article that pertains to an announcement that he was opening his practice here in Fredericksburg with a partner. I also found another article published around 2000 that showcased the efforts of local organizations as well as volunteers to preserve the history of the shop, preserve the history of Hugh Mercer's legacy in Fredericksburg. Additionally, one thing that I found that I had never really looked at before is called a dendrochronology report. Essentially, this is the study of looking at the rings in wood or lumber in order to determine its age. Now, this report was utilized to determine the age of the structure that the apothecary shop is now located in. One thing of note, which I will also cover in a little while, is that the apothecary shop itself is not in its original location today. It's suspected that the original location burned down at some point, and when the shop was rebuilt, it was rebuilt in a different structure that was utilized, I believe, for other business purposes such as tobacco growth or potentially even a stable. I'm standing on the corner of Amelia Street and Caroline Street in downtown Fredericksburg in front of the Hugh Mercer Apothecary Shop. Now this shop, as I mentioned before, was where Hugh Mercer set up his practice in Fredericksburg when he relocated from Philadelphia in 1760. Now this is not the site of the original shop. This structure was built in 1772 around the same time that his shop existed. However, the original shop, which was across the street to my left on lot 49, suffered a fire or some other sort of devastating failure that resulted in its destruction. So when the apothecary shop was deemed as something that needed to be recreated and preserved, they actually built it here in this structure, which existed on lot 48. So within the structure itself, as you walk in, you'll find the actual shop itself, which houses an entire display of all sorts of remedies, be it seeds, nuts, insects, herbs, plants, vegetables, and other sorts of living creatures that were utilized and prepared in different ways, such as steeping, boiling, burning, crushing, and other various methods in order to create the remedies that Dr. Mercer needed in order to heal his patients that came with all sorts of maladies. Further on in the actual shop itself was the room where he would perform a lot of these various procedures. He also had the ability to perform some minor dental procedures, including tooth extractions. So upstairs you'll also find kind of a recovery room and a powder room. In the apothecary shop itself, there's typically at least 2 docents that are volunteering or working on at any given point. And I had the opportunity to meet with a couple of them, take some photos, as videography inside the shop is not permitted. But I did have an opportunity to sit down with one of them and just kind of do a quick interview on what she believes is the value of preserving the shop and preserving Hugh Mercer's legacy.
My name is Margaret.
Margaret, nice to meet you. As part of my assignment, I wanted to have a conversation with you briefly, just to kind of ask you some questions about you, your time here, your experiences, and anything else of value we can add to understanding why it's important to preserve local history.
Okay. Well, I've been here 20 years now. It has flown by. I had worked in the schools and realized that I was getting grumpy and I needed to change and do something different. And so the manager here happened to be somebody I knew, and I asked her if she needed any volunteers, and she said, "No, but I'll hire you." And so it began. I've always enjoyed history of people's lives, not so much the dates and the wars and the things, but how people lived and how they made a living and how they made a life. And so this fit perfectly into that, and all of the different medicines that people used. And I discovered quickly that I'm a big fan of leeches. I've been known as the leech whisperer on occasion. So dealing with the leeches and keeping the leeches alive and doing those is something good. But it's so valuable for people to see what medicine was and where it came from and how things evolved over time. And it's so interesting to have medical people, medical students, medical professionals come in, and when you're talking to them, you see things click. That oh yeah, that is where it came from. So that's kind of my story.
That's a fascinating perspective because as a history student, I generally think of things in terms of historical value and to understand that, hey, there's other pieces of society that preserving this shop touches, such as, like you said, students in the medical field, you know, kind of coming back and understanding the roots of how medicine was taught a couple of centuries ago or practiced here in the colonies. So understand that is awesome insight. I appreciate that. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation and were able to take something away from it. Obviously, maintaining and preserving local history is very important anywhere you are, but I've come to realize that in Fredericksburg, Virginia, it is critically important, as there is so much history here that not only the natives, but various organizations try to preserve on a regular basis. Funding, of course, is always an issue. Interest can sometimes be an issue. But for most of the citizens here, the apothecary shop is just one example of the value of preserving local history.